And Kenny is older. He's 12. And so we're going to do what a lot of people call a pony clip. Where we're going to make his body pretty short, and we're going to leave him like some bell-bottom things at the bottom, and it's going to be like a mohawk, like a pony at the top. The reason we do this with him is because, number one, he's retired, he's older, and we don't want to have to keep up a whole lot of hair and make him have to have a bath every week. So this is the Poodle Pony Trim. Now, you can do this on all different kinds of dogs. You can even do this on, like, you know, drop coat dogs like Shih Tzus and things like that. The pony part at the top here tends to be a little bit easier for dogs with curly coat, but it can be done. And again, then it just looks more like a horse because the main part just kind of lays over. So you can do this. I don't do poodle feet on him anymore because he's older. I don't want to make him do it, and he doesn't care. You can do this with poodle feet and make bracelets instead if you like, but I like, when we get down to it, I like this more of a kind of a bell-bottom kind of Asian fusion kind of thing at the bottom. And you can do this, you can modify this however you want. See, he's trying to put his head down because he thinks I'm going to do his top knot. But I like a clean face because I don't like to mess with mustaches and all that. But you could do this with the goatee like you do on a German trim, or you can leave a little donut mustache if you want to. It can be modified pretty much however you want. But basically what we're talking about with the pony trim is the basic pattern on the body, and then you can kind of modify it however you like. So this is a 30 blade, and it's completely up to you how short you do the face based on the color of the dog and their being sensitive to the blade or what have you. This is your basic poodle face. You shave from the corner of the eye, the corner of the ear to the corner of the eye. And don't fuss at me, I don't pluck ears. I'm sure y'all have heard me say that before. Every time I pluck his ears, he gets an ear infection. Otherwise, as you can see, that's nice and clean and pretty. No infection, no problems, but the minute I pluck his ears, he starts to have issues, so we don't do that. So the corner of the ear to the corner of the eye, and then like I said, if you want to modify it and leave a mustache or a goatee or whatever, you can do that. This is not a hard and fast rule. This is a fun pet trim, something you can do on your own dogs at home, or something you can offer to your clients with older dogs that need to maybe get groomed a little less often because they're getting older and it's getting stressful for them. In the corner of the eye, corner of the ear to the corner of the eye. And if they're real fuzzy like this, just knock off a little bit of hair first and then go back and refix your line. I'm sorry. But I tend to let him get a little fuzzy in between and don't mess with him, but just give him a bath every once in a while because, you know, he's 12. He's getting to be, he's not grumpy for grooming, but he's just getting to that age where he doesn't want to be messed with constantly. So I try not to give him a haircut too horribly often, but at the same time keep him maintained. And then you find your Adam's apple. You can feel that with your finger. There's a little bump there. And if you go straight up from there, pointing your blade in and not out, you won't get it too wide. Go in this way like that. So whenever you do a poodle face, that's a good way to gauge how to do that. A nice clean face. And they say the rule of thumb with poodles is if you want to know if you have a poodle with a good face, a nice head, it's the most difficult one to shave because there's all this chiseling under their eyes and such. And this is my foundation stud. He's what creates all the beautiful heads on the toys that I have. And even in his old age, he's got a really nice head. So if it's really hard to shave the poodle face and you keep finding that you're missing stuff like that, it's because they've got all that nice chiseling under their eyes and around their muzzle, which is really what you want. So sometimes with him especially, I have to go back and look and see little hairs sticking up. Good boy. Alright, so this is my wall Arco clipper, not the mini Arco, the regular Arco, the full size rechargeable. Of course, there'll be a link to that to get it on Amazon if you want to in our videos, in the subscription. And this is the red clip-on comb. You can also get these, I believe, on Amazon. There's a whole set of them that goes on here. They're different than the ones for your regular corded or cordless larger clippers. So this is the red one, which is the shortest one, which in my opinion gives you about between like a 5 and a 7 blade. So I don't like to make him too short because he's older. And yes, you can go backwards or forwards, whichever you want to do. Backwards tends to make it just a little hair bit shorter. That's reverse. And then of course if you're doing a drop coated dog, it is definitely going to be shorter because you're going against the way the hair lays and the hair is pointing towards what you're doing. So you can go forward if you're not comfortable, but I'm used to doing show dogs and doing reverse shaving a lot with my clipper vac, but we're not going to do that today because we want you to be able to hear and see this really well. And the other reason I'm not doing him super duper short is, again, as he's getting older, he's not exercising as much and he's sleeping more, and so he's lost a lot of muscle tone and he looks kind of skinny even though he really isn't. You can see that he's got a little bit of chunk going on there, but he is losing some muscle tone, and so I don't want him to get too cold. But again, like I already said, I also don't want to have to groom him, you know, every single month. I want to be able to put it off a little bit longer and just give him a bath because he's an old guy. And that happens with some of my clients too. As they get older, I give them a shorter haircut and then bathe them for a couple of months on their appointment instead, to kind of stretch it out a little bit and make it easier for the dog. So basically I'm going to leave everything here on the top, up over the top of his head, because we're going to try to make like a horse mane. That's why they call it a pony clip. Now you have to be really careful, especially on these older dogs, when you get down around these areas here where these flaps of skin are, because even with the comb on you can catch those flaps of skin, and you'll notice I go forward there and try not to run it right along the edge. You can come back later and get that with something else if you really want to, especially on these older guys that start to get that loose skin. I don't groom cats anymore, but I did, you know, you have to be careful with cats too, because they're their skin is thinner than dogs for sure, and that you tend to, that's, if you're going to nick them, that's where you're going to nick them, wherever that, generally where that skin. So what you can do is you can stick your fingers in behind and push that hair around and pull it towards yourself like this, rather than go like that. So I'm just going to take basically his whole entire body off and just leave like a mohawk right down the center. Picking up their legs. Try not to pull them out this way so far. Try to pull them back and forth the way the leg would normally go. That makes the dog more comfortable, and so they don't fight you quite as much. Even an older dog that is uncomfortable, if you don't overstretch those legs, they tend to be a whole lot more cooperative, because you're not hurting them. And my finger is right here.
Right where?
My finger is right there, so I can see where the edge of his skin is and everything, and I'm pushing my finger from behind so I don't catch that skin. And I'm really not pushing down hard with my clipper. That's another mistake that a lot of new groomers make, is they try to make the clipper work rather than just letting the clipper do the work. They push down really hard. And I've seen a lot of newer groomers, they cut dogs all the time and they can't figure out why, or they scrape their faces and cause clipper irritation or clipper burn. And a lot of times I find that it's, some dogs are just sensitive, but a lot of times I find it's because they're pushing that clipper too hard and you're actually scraping the dog's skin.
Can you guys notice she's just really holding the clippers with the tips of 3 fingers? So it's kind of like sanding. You should be using just the tips of your hand and not a death grip and forcefully pushing. So if you're trying to get out of that habit, try to hold it with just a couple of fingers.
Like a pencil.
And that will make it easier for you not to dig in and push hard.
It's basically pretend like you're writing. That's what my person taught me a long time ago, is pretend it's a pencil. And only use the tips. The same thing with your scissors. If you've got your scissors in a death grip, there's a couple of things going on. Either your scissors are not good, they're not sharp, they don't fit you, or you need different scissors, or you need a different sharpener, or you need something. Because the more you put a death grip on those shears and have to close them really hard to get them to cut, the more likely it is that you're going to cut a dog with those scissors. Your scissors should close, even on the thickest of coats, they should close pretty easily. Unless, I think the exception to that is the Cocker Spaniel bevels, because their hair is so thick, but it still shouldn't be. I know he's.
I know.
Yeah, as he's getting older, he's getting a little more fussy about me doing stuff with his legs. So instead of trying to pick it back up again, I just let him sit it down and then I'm trying to work around him. Because obviously he's either getting tired or something is hurting. Because I've raised him and he's usually very cooperative. And I've noticed that he's started to do this where he's arching his back too as he's gotten older. So I'm thinking maybe he's kind of hurt himself a little bit running up and down the back deck or something. Because he's been doing that a little more lately too. So I'm just kind of working around that and trying not to make him do anything that I think will put a strain on his back. Good boy. And on that note, I've decided that I'm gonna I was gonna give him like a little carrot tail, but I think I'm just gonna buzz it all off with this same blade. Because I think it'll be easier on him. Because believe it or not, guys, their tail is attached to their spine. I know that seems like a silly thing to say, but I've got another client with a poodle, and all I can do is hold her tail like this to trim it, because if I pull her tail up, it hurts her, and then it makes her hurt for a couple of days afterwards because she's hurt her back. So sometimes you just have to do what you can do. So I've decided I'm going to go ahead and take his whole tail off, even though it's not my favorite look. I just deemed right now that I think that's going to be best for him. Because he is, sorry, I found more hair over here.
You're always finding a little
I'm
hair,
always finding
hair.
little hairs here and there. I'm thinking this is going to be easier for him to just do it this way, and he is tucking his tail, so I'm just
I notice he doesn't really want to lift it.
Yeah, and he's never, like, that's not his usual. So again, let this be a lesson in, even if this wasn't my dog, if this was my client's dog, I would just, get her on the phone or get the client on the phone and say, hey, this is what I have to do today because he's older, and and I've done that a lot. I mean, I just did it, matter of fact, I just did it on Friday. I have an older poodle who's getting to the point to where, like, he can't see and he's having major issues, and every time I have tried to blow dry his head, like the last 3 times, he's gone into what I call a dryer panic attack, or some people call it a seizure. And so this time I sent her a text message because I'm mobile. She's not home. I go in and get him from the laundry room and give him his haircut and all that stuff. And I just texted her and I said, hey, I couldn't blow dry his head today. And, from now on, he's probably just going to have to be a little bit curly. And she said, okay, thank you so much. Believe it or not, most people appreciate that. They don't want their dog freaking out. They don't want their dog to bite you. They don't want the dog to be stressed. And you know what? When they're 14 years old and their haircut isn't perfect anymore, most people are fine with that. All right, so basically what we're trying to create here is I'm going up to the top of his shoulder and just kind of skimming up to try to make this mohawk, and then I think I'm probably going to pull it up to here and only do it from here, because I've seen people do it further back, but I don't think that's going to look so great. And then the other thing you do is you find right over the top of the ear here, and
show it again one more
right
time.
here over, you can feel where the ear attaches to the head.
Okay.
So we're going to have to separate this from the mohawk. So we're going to go right there over the top of his ear and try to just start setting our line like so.
Okay.
So now you can kind of see where you started that, and you can go ahead and flip the ear up, and then you can take this stuff from the side. But if you do this first, a lot of times you'll either go too far or you'll mess up your line. And then this way you now have your line, and you can always move it in further if you need to. And I find that for me, doing this backwards makes making a line easier. You may find it's the opposite for you, but for me, doing it backwards helps me create that line because I can stop. As opposed to this, which may mean, your line gets kind of squiggly and all of that. I find doing it backwards helps me make patterns a whole lot easier when we're doing this old-fashioned and funky kind of pet stuff. Okay, and we're going to take this off up to right behind his shoulder, which is, there's a little dip in between the shoulder blades right here. So if you do it like up to just right behind there, that's generally a good place to put it. Okay. This is generally a good way to catch this stuff because you can come from the side and not get these skin flaps as easy. And it's also more comfortable for the dog. You have this front in a natural position if they'll let you do it. He's used to me doing it. And then you're not pulling their legs out to the side. Basically, you're just putting their weight on those back two legs, and as long as they're comfortable with it, it's easier. I did discover one time, one of my clients has a Lhasa in full coat. So sometimes that makes it really difficult to see their conformation when they have full coat like that. And I started trying to lift him up to do his inside of his back legs like that, because she was saying that he peed on himself a lot. And he just absolutely refused to let me do it, like fought me tooth and nail. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And I told her. Sure enough, she took him into the vet, and he had hip dysplasia, a Lhasa.
Oh, that was hidden underneath all
his
the
hips
coat.
were just completely out of whack, and there was no way for him to stand with me holding him up like that. And so, sometimes there's little things like that can actually help find underlying issues. If the dog's just not being a butt, obviously that really hurt him, because I knew him. Been grooming him since he was a puppy, and I thought, well, that's weird that he wouldn't trust me, for me to just lift him up like that. And sure enough, it wasn't that he didn't trust me, it was that it really hurt him. And I don't remember if it was both hips or just one, but he definitely, because he's passed on now, but he definitely has he had hip dysplasia, which is really odd in a small dog too. It's not, you see it in minis or, medium-sized dogs like that sometimes, but it's really not the usual. Like the Poodle Club, the Toy Poodle Club doesn't even require hip x-rays to get their clearances, because it's just not as prevalent in small dogs as it is in large dogs. Alright, so now I'm going to comb it a little bit and see if my lines are kind of sort of about the same on both sides. And then I think I'm probably going to narrow it up a little bit more, but we'll see here. Let's give it just a second. look at him from the front and see. This one's a little bit farther in than the other one. And you know, if it's a younger dog you're doing this on, you can spray this and put product in it and turn it into a mohawk if you want to. You can comb it all over to the side and make it like a comb over if you want to, more like a, you know, like a horse's mane would lie that direction. There's lots of fun things you can do with it.
Oh, light just shut off?
Yep.
That's okay. And we're good to go, just that fast. Getting better at this.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, boom.
Okay.
Big boom.
So, and you can do a couple things with this. You can, like I said, you can spray this up and make it like a mohawk. You can make it shorter and make it more like a you know, when they trim it on a pony where it's just like a brush, like it sticks straight up, like more like a mohawk. You can grow it out and kind of keep combing it one direction and just let it lay over, more like it would on an actual horse if it's actually growing out like that. So there's lots of fun things you can do with it and make it, you know, a cute, stylish little trim for a younger dog, or like I said, it doesn't have to be a poodle. You can do it on, you know, a lot of other breeds and make it more kind of Asian fusion-y if you like. Now, the other thing that I like for him is I don't like his ears to be super duper short, because if I shave them too much, he does that where he folds them and they kind of stick out, and I don't really like that very much.
He folds them over
See?
to the side.
Yeah, you can see how he folds them, and like if there's not enough hair, they kind of stay like that, and I don't particularly care for that because it's just a poodle breeder picky thing. Like some people think it's adorably cute, me not so much. So my preference is that I like his ears to be left a little fluffier, but you can take them as if they've got really good, he's got plenty of leather, like it almost comes to the end of his jaw, but it's set far back on his head, so they tend to pop up. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and do the ears, but just not as short as the body. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this comb. I think that's where, oh no, that one goes in there. All right, I'm going to try this blue one, which I believe is equivalent to a 2, which is also basically like a 4-blade. And I'm just going to take off the whole ear, just not taking off a whole lot, but I'm going to trim the edge really tight. So my aim is really just to kind of smooth it out and give it a nice trim. The underside. And if you've got a dog that's got really, really hairy around in here, you can shave this part shorter if you want to.
But there's not a lot of hair in there.
Just clean up those hairs like this. I'll go ahead and do it because he don't care.
Okay.
But you can just clean up those kind of stray, funky hairs on the ear leather just on the inside. And that'll also make the ear lay down a little bit better. Go ahead and do it on the other ear. So we're even. He's like, wait, Mom, that tickles. What are you doing? little comb back on. And these just slide on the edge of the blade and they go all the way back like that. They're not like the other ones where there's those little springs and whatnot. So just go flat next to the ear, put your whole hand behind it so you don't slip off and catch the edge. And go out to the outside, like that.
Perfect.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're a good boy. Yes, you are.
It's like, I like my new do.
You're a very good boy. With your stinky breath. Just did your teeth too. Okay. All right. So I just saw a couple little hairs right here that were bugging me, which all you groomers understand. So we'll get that. Okay. Put this stuff. So now we've done all our clipper work and such. Of course, I did his pads of his feet and his private area and all that stuff when I did his bath. So, like I said, you can grow this out if you want to, but for him, I don't want it to be super duper long and have to be high maintenance. So I'm going to come right along the edge like this. Just clean that up. I want it to be more like a pony brush. Kind of a mohawk kind of thing that I don't have to trim constantly, but that looks kind of cute. And the more I trim this stuff on the outside edge, the better it's going to stand up, because these shorter hairs will support the longer hairs. And then I'm also going to trim right along the edge of his ear. The best way I've found is to run your fingers right up to the edge, and if you have longer nails, I don't have long nails anymore, but you can run your fingers right up to the edge, and then where your fingernail drops off, you can pretty much know you're safe to go right to that point. And then just move your finger along where you're going and feel the edge of that ear. I'm doing it slow so you guys can see and not panic. Back down here, right along the edge. Got my edge of my fingers pressed right onto the edge of his ear, so I know exactly where it is. And then I do the same thing on the other side. Always point the tip of your shears towards the tip of their ear when you're cutting. If you cut the other direction like this, that's where you're going to catch skin and catch the edge of the ear. And if you have to do it 2 or 3 times when you're first starting out, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So his ears are still popping up a little bit, but I prefer to have a little bit of fuzz on them rather than them to be naked. So I just trim up one side a couple of times. The more you get used to doing this trim, the faster it'll be. I think this is only the second time I've done this on him, so it's a learning curve for me too. Anytime you do something new, it's going to take you longer than usual. And if you follow through with this all the way to the front, you can actually leave this lay in between their eyes, almost like a Bedlington, because you've cleaned out here on the side in front of their eye, they can still see.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I'm going to turn him to look towards you and do the other side.
Okay.
Give you a
I'm
little
going to
bit.
go through the other side to make it easier.
Okay.
And you'll be cutting towards me.
Yeah, that's fine too. So I fluff it all up straight first and trim along the edge, because I want those hairs along the edge as they grow out to support the longer hair on top. And then you can leave this sticking up like that, or you can blend that bottom part into the back of the shoulder there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just like I would any other top knot or anything else. I'm going to comb it all over to the side, and I'm going to go right down the edge again, not all the way to where I was before, because that's going to make it super duper short. You can if you want to, but I'm still experimenting and learning how short I want this to be on him. So I'm going to comb it all over to the side, and then I'm going to take off about 1/4 of an inch and go straight down where I went before. And then I'm going to fluff it back up and say, okay, that's probably a little bit too long, but we have to go back over to the other side and do it over there first.
Okay.
Before, you sit back down, buddy. Good boy. Sit. Good job. Before we make a decision, you have to, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So combed it all over. Now there's not as much on this side because we already trimmed it on the other side. Comb it all over and just take off that little edge about 1/4 of an inch, just like we did on the other side. And then we're going to fluff it up again and see what it looks like. And we're going to blend this part here, like we did on the other side. Now, I think that's a wee bit too long, because in a month it'll be laying over and flopping everywhere, but I like the shape of it. So, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my curved shears from the back, and I'm just going to follow that line right up to right behind the occiput. That's the pointy bone at the back of the head. Just going to take that very top ridge off, what we already did, and then I have to flip him around and do the rest from the front. So, okay. And then I'm going to just follow that right around. Now that I've made my shape, all I'm doing is taking the top off. Blend that a little bit more. The more you comb it, the more you find stuff that really needs to be trimmed or blended. Now I'm going to take some of this stuff, because he doesn't need all of that between his eyes. But I also kind of like it because it gives that coarse kind of look. So if you had a dog that really hated it, that it bothered him, you could trim that off right there and just make it more like a mohawk. But I think I'm going to leave it and see how he does with it. So I think it's kind of cool. Almost like a Bedlington kind of a look. Okay. And then sometimes, like the next week or whatever, you'll give them a bath and you'll find other hairs sticking out that aren't supposed to be there. That's normal. Okay, and now we're going to trim his other ear too, so both sides are even. fingers right up to the edge of the ear so I know right where his ear is so I don't cut the edge of his ear. So moving my thumb wherever I'm going so I can feel where the edge of that ear turns down. And that's kind of sticking uppy right there, so I'm just going to blend that down a little bit. It doesn't add to the flyaway look of the ear. We've got some hairs over here that just do not want to behave, so they need to be trimmed. They keep sticking out. Okay, so that's the head part. And then like I said, if you don't like this, you can trim that off right underneath like this and then just keep it like a mohawk, but it's not hanging in front of his eyes. But I personally like it, so we're keeping it for today. Some extra hair there. Okay, so we put him back in the lead because he'll feel more comfortable while we're doing his legs if I do that. Don't string him up tight, but enough so that he knows it's there, because he's my old competition dog and he tends to fall asleep when he gets tired and he likes something to lean on. Okay, so that's the head part. Now, like I said before, this part, I like it to be kind of weird and fluffy, and I don't even know how to explain it, but I like this look that it has right now. But it's getting to be too much, and I don't want it to get matted, and I don't want to have to brush mats out of him because, you know, he's an old guy and he don't like it. I don't blame him. So today, what I'm going to do, in between, I just kind of let it get like this, but today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and trim it. And then, like I said, you guys, if you want to do poodle feet, you can do that and give them more like bracelets if you want to. But I think the pony trim looks a little better with full feet, but that's just a personal preference. So all I'm doing is I'm pulling all this hair down and taking everything off the bottom like we always do, because you don't want a bunch of hair hanging off the bottom of the feet. And do that all the way around. Comb it all down. Yeah, see, he's already got, it's just getting too long. It's already got, I just combed all
mats.
It's not mats, it's just starting to tangle already, which means in a week and a half it's going to be a mat. So it's just getting to be, there's just too much hair. It's okay, buddy. Yep.
Okay.
So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat these more like bracelets, other than we don't really have, you know, the shaved poodle foot.
At the bottom.
But they definitely need to be trimmed down because they're just it's getting too much for him, and I don't want to have to do too much with him again. I know I've said that several times, but I just can't reiterate enough how much with some of these older dogs you really have to modify what you're doing to make them more comfortable. So in order to keep from holding his legs up constantly, I'm holding this leg by the elbow so it's super comfortable, but that makes him put his weight on this foot, and that way he's not going to move the foot as I trim around the outside edge. And I've got my curved shears, and I'm just going all the way around the outside. You can see the angle of the shears is not like this. It's like anytime you want a beveled foot, you always want your shears at this angle, not this angle. Because you pinch the foot when you do this angle. You always want to do this.
Go.
This part you want to trim when you from up here. Okay. And then now that I've done that, I'm going to take all this stuff off the bottom that's still there. Because I didn't want to get crazy with that from underneath and pinch the foot. Set the foot back down. Fluff all this up, and basically what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to treat this like bracelets because it needs to be trimmed down. So I'm going to fluff all of this stuff on the top and go flat around the top edge. So if you want to know how to do bracelets, this is how you do bracelets too. There's another video as well. This is how you do bracelets as well. And now that you have the bottom trimmed and you have the top trimmed, now you pick it up and you look at this stuff that's sticking out and you just go all the way around the outside. And you can make this bigger or smaller based on your preference for the dog or your preference of your dog, what you want it to look like. Just takes a little bit of practice.
I think we've covered this before, but you like the curved shears for this? You
Yes.
do find it easier?
I find that it helps me do this easier, but there are a lot of
do
people
it
that
straight.
have never used curved shears before, that they're more comfortable and they can make a circle with straight shears. I used to be able to till I switched to using curved shears because that's all I was taught was on straight shears. And I could probably do it again, pinch if I had to. So this is my version of the old man pony trim with natural feet, not shaved poodle feet. But again, you can modify that shorter with poodle feet, without poodle feet, leave it big and hairy like it was just a minute ago, because I think that's really cute too. But again, because he's older, I'm not going to do that. If he was younger, I'd probably leave it like that because I just think it's funky and fun. And once again, pick up the opposite foot so that he's comfortable. I'm holding this whole leg, but that makes him put the weight on this foot so he's not dancing around while I'm trimming around the outside edge. So I'm going to switch angles a little bit and give him a second. And go this way and change how I'm holding his other foot so that way he's not getting fatigued. I'm just checking what I did. Okay, and again, we're going to treat this just like it's a bracelet on a show trim or a Miami or a whatever. We're going to fluff all this stuff up. Oh, and grab those hairs that I missed. Take all this off the top. And this is angled a little towards the front here. He's still doing okay, but I'm going to start moving a little bit faster because he's starting to go. Then what I do is I come right around the back. You don't take this stuff off. Just come right around the back, halfway up each side, halfway. Start here, all the way around to that same spot on the other side and stop. And then this part accentuates the hock. So that's why we don't want to take that off from the bottom, because we chop it all off and make it one length. So now I'm just going to trim the edge of that so that it blends in with the rest of it. It's okay, buddy. You're doing good.
Almost done.
He's a good boy. Okay, one more time from the back. So we can see this extra stuff here and here. If you look at it from a different angle, you'll find different things that need to be trimmed. Okay, so you can want to get a shot, the trimmed pom-poms or bracelets or whatever you want to call them. Just a preference, or you just trim around the bottom of the foot and leave the rest of that all scraggly and silly, or you can make them more bracelet roundish trimmed looking, and you can modify that length as well, either shorter or longer.
Can you straighten his head so I can get a full shot?
Give me just a second because he's getting tired.
See the full view here, guys.
All right, Kenny, stack it up. Good boy. Thank you. Good job. I know you're tired.
I'm going to work back and forth here so we can get kind of the view. On his head.
Okay, the other side, real quick.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll show you the unfinished
And
legs.
then there's basically poofy feet without being trimmed. And then you can just trim around the bottom and leave that all fluffy if you want to, or you can leave it just like that.
So you could keep them longer and just trim them.
Yep. It's all about preference. Good boy. Good job.
Yeah.